Hello and welcome to the 42 Rugby Show. After a disappointing weekend in the Champions Cup for Munster and Leinster, we're coming live from the Aviva Stadium and we're joined by former Ireland head coach Eddie O'Sullivan. In this episode we're going to look at Munster's kick-heavy game plan, their shortcomings in attack and also the brilliance of Sarries. And after Leinster lost in Lyon, we'll talk about their disastrous opening 15 minutes. Eddie, will there be big regrets or were they beaten by better teams this weekend?
I think there'll be regrets in Leinster for sure. I think they'll look back in this game as a golden opportunity to get to a European final and they let it slip based on their first half performance. I think Munster will look back and say, look, we did everything we could with the game plan we had and we just beaten by a better team. So I think there'll be different emotions going around, but I think Munster will take solace out of the fact that, you know, if you went back 10 months, you'd never have said Munster would be in this place. So there's a lot in for that, but I think it shows as well that they have a long way to go if they're going to eat at the top table again. Yeah,
there was a clear gulf, particularly in that match. I think Leinster will have, as you said, the bigger regret. They left it behind them in that 15 minutes. But in terms of the season overall for these two provinces, obviously Ulster had another disappointing European campaign, but have the Irish sides shown that they're back amongst the elite?
We are back, there's no doubt about that. And you'd like to think Ulster aren't far away. Connacht, it's kind of the rebound season after a great year last year. I don't think I'm expecting them to do the same. But I think, we're back in the hunt. I think as well, if you look at the Pro 12, I think we probably have two Irish teams, I think, in that as well, the way things are going. Now, that could change, obviously, but that's kind of wearing green colour spectacles on it. But certainly we're back in the mix in a big way, I think, for different reasons. I think Leinster developing a game plan, a style that suits around them, and so are Munster. But I think at the moment Leinster are further down the track in terms of their potency and their ability to beat probably the stronger teams in Europe.
And a pretty incredible squad. Let's jump in with the Munster game first. We were here at the Aviva Stadium and 37 kicks out of hand. It was a massive part of their game plan. I think by about kick 13 the groans started going around the stadium. People were getting a bit restless with the tactics. Could you see why they did it, or could you maybe explain to us why Munster kicked so much?
I think if you step back and say, well, look, you're coming to play one of the top teams in Europe, the champions, what's our strategy? Our strategy is to play territory, stay out of our own half, knowing that Saracens don't take risks in their own half. So they kept Saracens pinned back. So territory was over 60%. That sort of the game, part of the game worked. The kicking game, I suppose, on a balance, Munster won the kicking game. So in terms of kind of staying in the game for long periods and keeping Saracens pinned back in a kind of a cup final scenario, because it's a one-off, I think that was their mentality going into the game. And they won that side of it. But the big problem for them, with all the territory and all the possession, they were just incapable of breaking down what is a superb Saracens defence. But they would have known that coming in. So it begs the question, when they got into those kind of kill zones where they could really extract some dividends and, get the scoreboard taken over, they couldn't get it done. And their game plan and their strategy with the ball in hand comes into question on the back of that. Where they put themselves on the field, how long they stayed there, the possession of territory, they got all that bit right, but what they had and what they used their possession probably very poorly at the end of the day against the Saracens team that were set up to lock them down.
Yeah, I think that's a really relevant point, is that you get into these areas really intelligently. Like, there's different ways to gain territory in rugby. Some teams use the ball through the hands, run into that zone, and
we saw Leinster that in the second half in France. But you're dead right, there's different ways to skin the cat. But when you're down there and you're in that sort of I call it a kill zone, you have a chance to score. It doesn't matter, it could be 3, it could be 5, it could be 7. You've got to get some dividend for your efforts, and Munster just didn't score for 70 minutes when you think about it. They got the try at the very end. It's 70 minutes earlier they scored their penalty, and that to me showed that they just could not find a way to break down the Saracens' defence. And it wasn't that they were badly set up, but their intent seemed to be to do what they've done all season, and to successfully do what they've done all season is bully teams all over the field. And when they get into that last 15-20 metres, they usually extract something, but Saracens weren't going to let that happen, and they really kind of ran out of, I suppose, ideas long before the end of the game.
Yeah, well, like you mentioned that, we're going to take a look at an example of that. We talk about kicking into the right zone of the pitch, but actually when Munster were in the right zone, they often followed it up with another kick. This example is Duncan Williams. We see in the top left here of our example, they set a ruck wide on the right after one of those Tyler Blandock kicks, kind of shallow kicks to Andrew Conway. They win the ball back. But instead of playing off that, instead of, we've got Saracens slightly disjointed here, he actually kicks over the top here. He signals for Tommy O'Donnell to follow up the kick, and we can see to his left, like, he's got all these options. Yeah. Munster, as you say, are in that good shape. Yeah, Saracens are probably well set. They recover and scramble really well, but instead he lofts this ball over the top straight into the hands of Alex Good.
It's an easy out for Saracens.
Away momentum.
It's an easy out for Saracens. It's not asking Saracens any questions they're going to struggle to answer. And attack is about asking questions to the defence that they're going to struggle to answer. Not every attack is going to lead to a try. Not every channel you go down is going to give you big dividends. But it's about, we call it patience, but being smart about where you go on your next strike, so that eventually you get your dividend. And the problem for Munster was that everywhere they went, and they didn't venture too far away from the first pass. That was the problem. And at times it was crying out for just one more pass into another channel and go after Saracens, and maybe we get more traction. Maybe we don't get a try, but we get further in behind them, and from that we build something else. They never got that sort of momentum. I think for me at the first half, the alarm bells went off as I think Munster got within 2 or 3 metres of the Saracens line. I think Peter O'Mahony got a soft shoulder, and we're right under the post. So this is where Munster, they always extract some dividend. And I think it was probably 10 or 15 phases later, they were back around the 22, and they got turned over, and it was against 14 men, and you're going, problem here today. And I think by the second half, they realised there was a problem, and the second half you had another one of those sequences where 2 scores down, the game clock is running out, and Blendell drops in the pocket and goes for a drop goal, which not going to change the momentum of the game. I think even the Munster players at that stage had believed it wasn't going to be their day, and that's a pity because they did a lot of good things, but they just were not able to craft a game plan to break down Saracens when they got into that key area. Yeah,
well, let's actually look at that example, the Blendell drop goal. I thought it was a really telling sequence in the game. I thought it summed it up because it lasts 4 minutes bowling play time. Munster start with a line out in the 22. They actually mess up the line out. We'll come back to that element of the game, but they go through those 18 phases. And we're going to look here, like, it's a brief example and probably doesn't illustrate that well, but it's a double tackle by Saracens. They kept getting one in low, then one in barging on the body. Really good tackle technique, but because Munster were running into those areas, they could double up. And they go through 18 phases of this. Brilliant Saracens defence. Their work rate was really good. If you listen on the ref mic as well, just incredible communication. And you end up with this situation. We have Blendell here dropping the goal, but actually the entire Munster team is within a half of the pitch. They're so narrow.
It becomes so narrow. Now, to be fair, they did set up 1-3-3-1 at times, and they used those 3-man pods, inside the 15s, and there was options out the back, but they didn't take them. They just went into contact, and okay, that's okay, but you have to take that option sometimes, not all the time. But when you go into that contact, the ball has to be quick, but Saracens were wrapping 4 guys around the corner. The advantage they had outside that was gone within an instant. And I think there was a fantastic, again, little cameos that stick in your mind of Saracens. They made the double tackle, all right? The player who was at the assist got up and was in the line. And then the player who made the tackle got up and was in the line. Then spotted Munster were shy at the ruck, counter-rucked. The assist tackler meant counter-rucked, and they won. So Saracens won the ball back on a counter-ruck with a tackler and an assist. They didn't even put any more resources in. And, to be fair to Munster, this Saracens defence, it's hard to find a chink in it. They are very, very good. They're very organised. They're very aggressive. They have fantastic work ethic. Their communication is brilliant. It's a very, very good defence. But you must say on the other side of it, I don't think Munster asked them very difficult questions, and Saracens were happy all day, even without the ball. They knew nothing bad was going to happen.
I mean, this particular sequence, just to finish up, that sums up your point about Saracens' work rate and work ethic, and even the double tackle. Because here, by the time they've kick chased 3 times up the pitch, Munster go back at them again. They go back again, and just the work rate in that kick chase is incredible. But here we can see Shock Brits and Chris Ashton combining after they've completed that tackle. It was a bit of an illegal tackle. I think Chris Ashton caught Conway on the top of the neck, but they turned the ball over. And then 3 minutes 47 seconds after the ball has been thrown into play, Farrell brings up this brilliant grubber kick in behind. Tyler Blendell, I think, is quite fatigued. He should probably be further across the pitch sprinting, but he can't get there, and Wiles gathers to score. Just a remarkable example of that work rate that Saracens bring. But I guess my question for you, in terms of coaching attack, is that the hardest thing to bring? Because Rasmus has been here for, as he says, 9 months, 10 months. He wanted to start with foundations. Is that always the thing that was going to come last?
I don't know if it has to be that way. No, he's his own strategy and his own plan, and you must give him credit with kind of re-energising Munster to where they are. It's been a really good season for them. You know, if we go back 10 months, nobody had this sort of ambition that they'd be in the top 4 of the Pro 12, that they'd be in the semi-final or top 4 in Europe. So they've come a long way. But I don't subscribe to the fact that you have to get all these things done before you can play a bit. I think you can do both. You know, plenty of talent in that Munster team. Now, you must remember as well, maybe if you look at it, step well back from this and look at a cultural side of it, Munster teams culturally like to play a physically dominant game. I mean, I remember myself with guys like O'Connell, Leamy, Flannery. When I was with Ireland, they always bellyached a bit about when we didn't go to with the forwards early doors, or we didn't go after teams up front a lot. We might have played a wider game against certain teams. Now, we did it with other teams, but they were never that comfortable in that style, because it's a Munster thing. It's part of the Munster culture, and they do it really, really well. That's how they play. That's how the guys come through the system. Then you've got a South African coach who, in by himself, like if you look at South African rugby, it's a very physically dominant game. So there seems to be a meeting of the minds there, and they like to play that way. And then it's been very successful all season. They're in a pretty good place. They got to a top 4 in Europe. They're in the top 4 in the Pro 12. They have strangled teams to that in the Pro 12. You know, they've been on a run of not losing games. So maybe it's very hard to step back and go, we got to change everything today. You don't have to change everything, but you have to think outside the box. And I thought they were going to, because I thought Erasmus hinted to that during the week, that there was a few tricks. But I don't know, we saw them. Now, maybe they went out with them and they didn't get them out of the box, but I have to think that, like, what we did see is that Munster need this evolution now. Not a revolution, an evolution in their attacking game. They need to be able to play across the field. It can't be all just in-your-face one-off runners and strangling teams physically. It'll get you so far, but when you get to the business end of the season, the guys standing opposite you aren't going to fall over that easily, and that's where the problems begin, as we saw last Saturday.
Yeah, that cultural element is fascinating, and the fact that you've experienced that, because when Rob Penny came in with his 2-4-2 and having guys in, like forwards locked in the wide channels, there was a lot of, as you say, bellyaching. I don't think they were too happy about it. He was probably too honest. He told everybody what he was trying to do. Like the dogs in the street in Limerick were talking about the wide attack, you know, and it's very un-Munster. That is very un-Munster way of playing, and Erasmus has captured that cultural dimension back again, where they are in your face, they're aggressive, they're usually fantastic in that final third of the field. They never leave without something. They strangle you to death, and teams almost accept, oh, we're in trouble here, we're not getting out of here without a score. It's almost they buy into it, but I think that doesn't get you all the way to the party. Like it's very close, but like, they need to put that extra dimension in their game now. Now you say maybe that's the next thing. It is the next thing. I don't know if it couldn't have been done along the way as well. You know, that this Munster team has some very good footballers. They have some really good footballers. And it's funny, Blendal as a 10, who I think has been a huge factor in their game, he's actually very suited to that game. He's a great guy to go to the line, and he's a superb passer. Probably the weakest part of his game is his kicking game, when you think about it. So he's actually, they have a 10 who can play this game, you know, and they have other players across the line who can do that. Zebo can play at first receiver, you know, he's a very talented attacker. So the personnel are there. The question is when they're going to start using them, you know. They seem to hesitate. Like, as you say, Blendal's good at that. He didn't really take the ball to the line much at all. And
no, because I think the game plan was territory, possession, grind them down, you know.
Players need to be able to sometimes go, actually, I got to make a decision. I'm the 10. I got to make a decision here and go back my instinct.
Well, you are the quarterback of the team, and if you change the dynamic of the game, you know, and I think there was a case for Munster, you know, early in the second half when they were still in the mix, but you could never see them really put enough points on the board the way they were playing, was to cut loose and have a crack. And if they went down kind of running at Saracens, then I think, you know, they probably might be a bit more comfortable in their skin this week after doing that. But they never really did that. And I think they'll be regretful about that to some degree, I think. They did a lot of things right. And I don't think Munster played badly on the weekend. They actually played very well. They dominated possession and territory, but they just didn't have the extra strings in their bow to pick apart the team of the calibre of Saracens. You know, and it was always going to be a big ask, but you know, they didn't really give it a shot, I think, in that department. Yeah,
you mentioned those possible out the back door passes. We have one of the examples we're going to look at here. And this is, as you say, early in the second half. The game is still 6-3 in Saracens' favour. I think we're in the 47th minute here. And we've got a ruck just here. And you can see there's nice width in the Munster attack. You mentioned that 1-3-3-1 shape. and it's on. Like there's space on that outside edge just here.
Yep.
Maybe not a try scoring space, but let's try and get to that zone.
But that changes the dynamics and the shape of the defence. If you get out there, and then they have to adjust, and then maybe you get a softer shoulder the next time. But if you run into the teeth of the jaws of the defence, it's a slow ruck, they wrap around. The next one is just the same. It's another car wreck to get any yardage, you know.
Yeah, and that's what they do here. Kilcoyne is in the middle of that forward pod. He gets on the ball there, and you can see just out the back, it's Rory Scannell, that guy that you would have hoped was the second playmaker just outside Blandale. He's calling for the ball, and I actually remember watching it live in the stadium. He kind of threw a little bit of a strop on the pitch afterwards. Why didn't this ball come to me? And said, like, this is in the Munster forwards mindset. And I'm not trying to pick on Dave Kilcoyne, but he's been told to carry hard at these guys. That's what he does.
He's a great carrier, but you saw him they have it identified. I mean, I think Kilcoyne is a world-class ball carrier.
Yeah.
I don't care who he's playing against. If you don't get him, he'll slip out and he'll let it get another 5 or 10 metres. And we've seen that at international level with him. But you saw Saracens had their homework done. They shut down Stander, they shut down O'Mahony, they shut down Kilcoyne. They picked their men and they got in, chopped and barged and got them on the ground early. And so you give Saracens credit for doing their homework. They knew what Munster were going to bring, and they shut it down reasonably comfortably.
Yeah, definitely. We just want to finally look at those kind of carrying stats, just to kind of highlight the point. Total of 111 carries, excluding the kick return, which maybe doesn't tell you a lot about the philosophy. But pick and goes 19, then one out carries 46 of them. So you're talking nearly 60% of your carries right around that ruck.
Around that area.
0 support carries, which we're talking about an offload or a second
or a
kind of carry in behind
behind
the line. It just didn't happen. So that tells us enough about Munster's game plan, and certainly backs up everything we've been saying.
Like again, if you're being a bit harsh, I mean, Zebo's best moments are when Saracens kicked the ball to him.
Yeah.
You know, and he looked dangerous. But he didn't get enough of ball in his hands on Saturday in places where he could hurt Saracens. I mean, he's the kind of guy you don't want to play against. And Munster didn't get enough ball in his hands, you know. I think late in the game, Saili came in, then the game was slipping away. You saw him cutting loose a bit. That's
the only line break of the game.
Yeah, that's his thing, you know. But I think they didn't need to have Saili in the field to do that. They could have used more players across the line to go after that sort of opportunity. But look, it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback, you know. That's what we're doing here. But I just think that the bigger picture here is that Munster came and played the way they always played, and the problem is against a team like Saracens, it's not going to get you where you want to go. They're just too good a side to bully like that and to dominate. And the pity is that they didn't maybe take more risks, and they might have given themselves a better shot at getting out the other side of it. Yeah,
fine European season, but plenty more to come.
I think there's plenty to do, and look, they'll reflect on this, and I think they'll probably won't argue too much with a lot of things people are saying, which we're not saying too much different than a lot of people are saying, that Munster need to evolve their attack. Put more dimensions on it and more shape on it.
Razzie said it himself. Just a quick word on Sarries and Mark McCall in charge of the impressive machine that is Saracens. He doesn't get too much credit back here. I think people find it hard to like Saracens, but I think that maybe that's changing slightly. How good a job has he done there, and is he a guy that could come back to Ireland?
I think he's done a phenomenal job, obviously. I think as well, I suppose he did his apprenticeship under Brendan Venter, who was there before him, and Venter didn't just walk out the door. He was still involved at a distance, came over and back. He came into an organisation that had, at the very early days of their inception, had kind of gone with the boom and bust attitude. They spent a lot of money on marquee names. They won a trophy early doors, and then they just seemed to fall over themselves time and time again. I think they had a kind of a key moment a long time ago where they decided that they would rebuild the club, and they put a huge emphasis on culture in the club. If you're in Saracens, you are, treated really well in terms of how you're looked after. They do everything. It's kind of a family environment, and players want to be at that club. But there's a cost, and the cost is that when you put on a Saracen shirt, you deliver week in, week out, week in, week out, week in, week out. They don't do anything too spectacular. They have some very good players. They never play in their own half.
Yeah.
And if they did once on Saturday, when Vinopola kicked the ball dead at half time, if they had one more pass there. Yeah. But they're so programmed to get out of their half. But what they do is they make no mistakes in their own half. They defend brilliantly. They don't give away too many penalties. And then they wear you down. And they have the players so that they have some phenomenal athletes. But I think the bigger picture for me in Saracens, because the type of rugby they play isn't phenomenal. I mean, I've been there a number of times. Chris Wilde is the US fullback. still plays there. He came off the bench and got to try on Saturday. And I've talked to him a lot about Saracens, and he says the culture there is very strong. You know, that everybody plays for the jersey every time. Everybody pulls together. It's a very cohesive unit. They have very good coaches, very clear vision of what they want, and they do a lot off the field to keep guys part of the club, and there's a family environment. And I think, you know, at the moment, in terms of how they run their business, they're the envy of a lot of clubs in Europe, and their recruitment is very smart. They've just signed Liam Williams from Wales.
Brilliant sign.
You know, that didn't happen like 2 months ago. That's been going on for months probably. They saw him, this is the guy we need, this is the guy we want, and they do it quietly, and then it's done. And I think they're a club now that are setting the standard. So to be fair to Munster, they've probably met the European champions again this year, unless something goes badly wrong for them. So you give Munster credit for that. Like they're playing probably the best team in Europe, but they do tick a lot of boxes as a club. How you run a club, how you manage a club, how you create a good culture in a club. And people talk about that, but really it's crucially important in a professional sport that the culture around the club is very strong, because people feed off it to become better, and if it's not good, they feed off to become worse. It's like an ecosystem, and if you run it very well, the dividends are very high.
Yeah, really impressive stuff from Mark McCall. Slightly different philosophy in terms of how they play. Leinster, we saw them come up short 27-22 after a bit of a comeback in Lyon. Amazingly entertaining game, spectacular occasion. I really enjoyed the GAA style pitch invasion at the end as well, but they left themselves with so much to do. What does a start like that signify? Is it a mental thing, or is it a tactical thing?
I think there's been some talk that they were overhyped, they were too pumped up for the game. They probably went out a bit, you know, and you can see in some ways there might be some little bit of truth to that, because when you go to France and you're playing away from home and it's a big occasion and there's a big crowd, the most important thing to do is not to start badly. Ironically, that's exactly what they did, but I think it wasn't through lack of effort. It was almost too much effort at times. For example, they lost 3 lineouts on the bounce. Like, there was one lineout where you felt, okay, they're under the pump here, they get out of their half, they get a lineout, and they're going, no, all they have to do here is win the lineout, hold on to the ball for 3 or 4 minutes, just play with the ball, make Clermont defend, maybe nick a penalty, and just take pressure off themselves, not to be locked in their own half. And they lost the lineout. Clermont go down and they score again. And this is the kind of self-inflicted wound that really kind of hurts you in a game like that. Plus, Ilson says yellow card, like an innocuous jersey tug that probably didn't make any difference, but ref spots it, yellow card, and it's 10 points, 3 for that, plus then, you know, the try that scored after. So I think they just inflicted too many wounds on themselves early in the game. And the ironic thing, and probably the most annoying thing for Leinster, is in the second half, when they actually held onto the ball and played rugby, they were the better team. I mean, Clermont were all over the shop. They didn't know how to defend the 1-3-3-1. They kept biting down on those runners when there was no need to, and got caught in the corners. And, you know, I'd say Leinster will look back at this game, even years to come, and say one that got away big time, you know. Yeah,
definitely. They're going to have to look at that defence. Even for the first try, it kind of was sending warning alarms. They tacked in that blindside regularly. We're going to have a quick look at that example, and the one where Pesadiatu ends up scoring off David Streddle's really good kick. We have a ruck just set up here, so it's quite a short blindside, but you know, you think Leinster are going to have enough defenders there. There's 4 of them here, really. But they get very narrow, and it's Gary Ringrose on the edge. We'll just come back to that, but he's there, and he's not giving himself the chance to get back out. And that means that when the pass, the triple skip pass, really nice pass from Morgan Parra, when it hits Strettle, Nasewa has to come forward to deal with him, obviously, and he puts that little really well-weighted chip. He had a superb game. I think he's talked about maybe showing Stuart Lancaster what he's made of, and Yato gets in, winning the race with his pace. But talk to us about that defensive setup. Is that an individual thing on the edge, or is that how Leinster defend that
no,
hard edge?
I think it was a poor defence, in the sense that they were a tad narrow, but not too badly so. I think the problem was the outside man, so and this I think is Ringrose here. He just played up too flat and too square. He just had to give himself just half a yard back and turn his shoulders out, because when the ball leaves the passer's hands and it's in the air, he knows immediately none of these players are getting it, so he can actually leave with the ball. And arrive and gives himself a chance to make the tackle. But once he's up flat and locks his shoulders in square, the ball's going to beat him.
You've got one option.
Fantastic pass. He's just taking himself out of the defence there. And that means then They have to close the gate for the full back. The ball goes over the top and it's a foot race. Whereas if he just take a half a step back, turn the shoulders out, as the ball leaves the passer, he makes the read, it's going over the top, and he's off. And he mightn't arrive with the ball, but he's pretty close after it, and he's a chance of putting the guy into touch. Maybe it's a turnover. Yeah. And they're the small little details that really hurt you, you know, against a team like that. Like, I thought Parra was outstanding, you know, and I thought when he went off, Leinster was shot here, you know, because he's such an influence on Claremont as a he decides everything, basically. He runs the game. But he is a phenomenal scrum half. I just don't understand why he's not still involved with France. I would hate to play against him. But you saw his ability to manage a game there. He saw the opportunity. Defence is flat. One pass, he puts a guy around the corner, leads to a try. So it's just those small little things like that. Just taking us out of the game. And maybe it's just we want to be aggressive here, want to get off the line, want to knock people on their backside. That's the difference between defence and tackling. Knocking people on their backside is tackling. Defence is tackling the right person. And you've got to give yourself a chance to do that. The right person to tackle there was the outside, and he just didn't give himself a chance.
Yeah, especially around that short side, because even on the second try down that wing when Strell was gone, there was maybe 3 men there, but it was Levy on the edge.
It's Levy on the outside.
You're a man down, but even still, it's the same kind of principle.
Give exact same. Levy again got up flat, got locked his shoulder in towards the ball. So when the pass went over the top, he can't turn and get out. Yeah. And if he had just taken a half step back, turned his shoulders out, you can still see the ball. As the ball leaves the passer's hands, you know it's going through the air high. It's not going to be going through the hands. You can give yourself a shot. It would have been tougher on Levy. He wouldn't have the same pace as Ringrose, but he would have given himself a shot to do it. And unfortunately, those 2 moments were kind of catastrophic, you know, in terms of what they led to.
A learning curve, definitely. One of the other areas in that first 15 minutes was the breakdown. Leinster kind of consistently losing ball in those wide channels. I think you mentioned their really nice 1-3-3-1 shape, which worked really well later in the game. I think at the start they maybe struggled to get resources to that ruck, or the decision making was maybe poor. Support.
There's always a risk factor when you're playing a kind of a set shape, whether it's 3-4-3 or it's 1-3-3-1, whatever the shape is, and there's multiples. There's always a danger that when you go to the line, no matter where you go to the line, you should be able to resource the ruck, because you don't know where you're going to go to the line. That's the whole point of having a shape. You've got to make good reads, go to the spaces. The danger of that is, I think, as well, Claremont identified the rucks early in the game. They wanted it into Leinster, and maybe it got caught a bit cold and not getting to the breakdowns quickly enough. They got turned over a few times, which sucked a bit of momentum out of them, and it probably scared them a little bit. But for me, the second half, they obviously adjusted at half time. They talked about the second half. In fact, they won penalties at the rucks. The 2 penalties that brought them back into the game was they got numbers there, and Claremont were called for going off their feet or for competing at the ruck, and it brought them back into the game. But there are things that can happen early in a game anyway. I don't think it was a major hang-up. I don't think that's why they lost the game, actually. I think they lost the game because of the way they started. And as I said, the 2 examples there, the mistakes they made at those key moments. And the line-out hurt them, because not that the line-out would have meant they'd have scored another 10 points or so, but what the line-out would have done is taken the pressure off them, got them out of their half, kept the pressure on Claremont, and a chance maybe to make a penalty or 2. But if that yellow card hadn't happened, Leinster could have got in 5-3 behind instead of 15-3.
Yeah.
You know, it's that simple, you know. And they gave themselves too high a mountain to climb.
Yeah. We have a question from the audience, actually. Neil Keegan has been on. If Leinster don't win the league, is this season a failure? I don't think it's a failure. You know, like, it's interesting people look at it that way, because if you take the American model of NFL or baseball or whatever, it's all about getting to the playoffs. Get to the playoffs and then see what happens, because playoffs are cup finals. You know, one team goes home at the end of it, and things can change a game. You know, like, let's say that Rougerie, that holding on Rougerie doesn't get called. Yeah.
I think Leinster win the game.
Yeah.
I think they're going to win the game. I think Claremont are rattled at the core at that stage, and then it's a different discussion. Like, you know, they're in a Heineken for a European final, and no one's really talking about the Pro 12 at the moment. So, like, it's all about getting to the playoffs. Now, when you get to the playoffs, you want to deliver, but things can go right or wrong. I mean, it's down to the day. If Leinster play Munster in the final at the Pro 12, you know, and Munster happen to prevail on the day, doesn't take away from everything Leinster have achieved this season. So we've got to stop looking at seasons based on if there's silverware on the table, it's a success, and if there's not, it's a failure. You know, I don't think you can do that, because winning silverware is a fickle thing. It always comes down to maybe 80 minutes of rugby and things can go wrong. Despite the fact we all agree that Saracens are the best team in Europe, is there anybody putting their house on that Claremont won't win the European Cup?
Yeah,
No,
it can happen.
It can happen on the day. If Saracens don't win the European Cup, does that mean they're a failure? I don't think so. So we have to be careful how we think about outcomes at the end of a season. Yeah, you do want to do it, you want to put yourself in that position, but like Leinster, I think, will take a lot out of last weekend, a lot of remorse that they didn't play well, but they still know that on any given day they're right up there with the top teams in Europe, and Claremont are one of them. Munster, you know, they have a little bit of a road to travel. It's a different place to be.
Definitely. Thanks to Neil for that question. We have another one from Andrew Clark. He says, were Zebo and Ringrose unlucky to miss out on the Lions? Nice try from Ringrose in that second half.
Great try, well taken. I mean, kind of Dricko-esque, and the way he ducked under 2 tackles and then just scorched his way into the in goal. I think he was unlucky. I thought Zebo was unlucky. There's always going to be a few of those. Look, it's a long Lions tour, you know, and I think both of them would be on the fringe now. If that hadn't happened, they'd be pretty close to getting a nod. So I think they're a bit unlucky, but it's just that's the way Lions selections go. You know, but having said that, I think they wouldn't be able to play us out there.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. You mentioned how close we were, just to wrap up our Leinster discussion, how close we were to having an Irish team in the final with Leinster, and that we can't just be really conclusive in our decisions. But this is the actual missed opportunities for Leinster later on in the game, or actually in the second half. We want to just have a quick look at them. In the first example, we've Hayden Triggs on the ball here. He's got Sexton, he's got Ringrose, and he's got 2 more actually out on the right-hand touchline. All he needs to do is that little tip-on pass just before
I think
the
that
tackle.
goes, I think that goes, he's in.
That's 53rd minute where you're back to 59.
Yeah, they are game changer moments. I mean, huge. I think if that pass goes, and for whatever reason it didn't, I don't. You know, the noise and the pace, maybe Triggs didn't hear him
because he couldn't pass. He's a comfortable.
Yeah, I think he's not in his line of vision. I think Johnny's coming a little bit late, so he probably can't see him. Johnny's probably screaming for it. Maybe he couldn't hear him. Simple thing like that. But there's no doubt he makes that pass. I think it's a try. Yeah,
and there's another example just to run through quickly. It's Ringrose on the ball this time. He's got a lot of men outside him here on the right, just 2 Claremont defenders. Again, for whatever reason, he opts to carry
more disappointing.
Carry into the ball, and that's the 77th minute. I know it's late in the game. You're losing 27.
I mean, look,
19,
you get within
a try there.
You get within a drop goal or a penalty, and you can maybe nick it. But that's disappointing. I know Ringrose will be disappointed with that, because, like, he's a centre. He's got to make that play. Like, it's one thing a second row, you know, not making a play like that, but certainly a centre has to make it, and that he'd be disappointed with that. They are the moments again that you get that can change the game. You don't take them, you look back at it and you spend a lot of time, you know, scratching your head. But that was a moment there, and you felt at that stage like if Leinster could have hit the front, it was curtains for Claremont. You couldn't see any way back from. But the one thing I think that you give a lot of credit to Leinster the way they played, but we have to as well step back and say I thought the Claremont defence was shambolic. For all the good things Claremont did, I thought the defence was shambolic. They missed 34 tackles, I think, which is just ludicrous. And just watching the decisions they made when Leinster ran everything in the second half from their own 22, and they knew it was coming. They kept biting down on dummy runners, like the pods of 3. They were biting down on those, and the ball would go out the back. It's a jailbreak every time, and you just wonder, like, what were Claremont thinking? Because if they do that against Saracens, it could get very, very ugly for them. But it was just very bad defence. But look, Leinster took advantage, and that's probably more grating for Leinster, because the same thing would happen in the first half. Claremont wouldn't have defended any better in the first half, I don't believe, given the way they were reacting in their system. No, they were a bit more fatigued in the second half, and you could see that, and they were making, you know, poor enough judgment decisions on defence. But there's no reason to believe that had Leinster got into that shape earlier in the game, hold on to the ball a bit more, they had probably another maybe try or 2 there from.
Yeah, just in terms of wrapping up that Leinster, I suppose, work on for them. We were talking about Munster building that attack. For Leinster, is there a big thing there, or is it just a case of getting that experience and doing it better next year?
I just think Leinster are further down the track, and it's about just doing it better. You know, they have huge depth as well in their squad, particularly the back row depth is just ludicrous. Like how they're going to keep all those guys.
Yeah, Ruddock was brilliant, I thought.
Oh, Ruddock was. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Rhys Ruddock. I think he's a phenomenal player, and I thought like he just showed why he is who he is on Sunday. Like he was just huge in that game. Like not just in the second half from the get go. I thought he had a massive game, but Yeah, look, Leinster have a lot of depth. They're, I think, more comfortable in their skin than they were last year. I think, you know, the Lancaster factor is a big factor there. You know, everybody seems to be on the same page. But I think they'll look back and say, look, you know, a little more accuracy, and we're going to be a serious outfit. It's very fixable. They're doing a lot of things right, Leinster. And again, like, yeah, they are probably favourites now for the Pro 12, but I wouldn't say if they don't win it, the season's a failure. I think it'd be very harsh.
But call it, Eddie. If we're here in a couple of weeks' time, it's Munster against Leinster. You think it's going to be?
I think Leinster have the horses, yeah. But look, it's a local derby if it's like that. So I think Munster won't be wanting. But if you were looking at it in a cold, calculating light of day, which team has more strengths to their bow at the moment? Which team has more options? I think Leinster have more options. But I suppose a Munster man, it's hard to say it.
It'll be a lot of fun. Eddie, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll be back in a couple of weeks to chat about that Pro 12 final. Cheers.